Here are some safety control measures that can be used to ensure the safety of workers in confined spaces. Hazard assessment. Conduct a thorough hazard assessment of the confined space to identify potential hazards and assess the risks associated with entering the space. Ventilation. Implement appropriate ventilation systems to provide fresh air and prevent the buildup of hazardous gases, vapors, dusts or fumes. Personal protective equipment, PPE, provide workers with appropriate PPE, such as respirators, protective clothing, and eye protection, to reduce their exposure to hazardous substances. Isolation and lockout, tagout. Isolate or lock out machinery or equipment in the confined space to prevent unexpected startup or movement that could cause injury. Communication and signaling. Establish clear communication and signaling systems to ensure workers can signal for help if necessary. Emergency response plan. Develop and implement an emergency response plan to ensure workers can be quickly rescued in the event of an emergency. Rescue equipment. Provide appropriate rescue equipment, such as harnesses and ropes, to facilitate a quick and safe rescue in the event of an emergency. Training. Provide workers with appropriate training on the hazards and risks associated with the confined space, and on the proper use of PPE and rescue equipment. Permit-required confined space program. Implement a permit-required confined space program that outlines the procedures for entering and exiting the confined space and the safety measures that must be in place. Continuous monitoring. Continuously monitor the atmosphere in the confined space to detect any changes or hazards that may arise. Testing of the atmosphere. Test the atmosphere in the confined space prior to entry to determine the presence of hazardous gases, vapors, dusts or fumes. Entry and exit procedures. Establish clear entry and exit procedures for workers, including the use of ladders or other means of egress. Confined space entry team. Assemble a confined space entry team that includes at least one attendant and one entrant, who are trained and equipped to perform their respective roles. Illumination. Ensure that the confined space is adequately illuminated to prevent accidents or injury. Weather protection. Provide workers with appropriate weather protection, such as rain gear or cold weather gear, to prevent exposure to extreme weather conditions. Signs and markings. Place appropriate signs and markings to indicate the location of the confined space and the hazards associated with it. It's important to continuously evaluate the safety measures in place and make updates as necessary to ensure the ongoing safety of workers in confined spaces.